have everyone's attention. Thank you. I just want to thank all of you for coming this evening. Just very quickly to introduce myself, my name is Ingrid Vallate Nunez. I work in career education. I'm also a Wellesley SIB, a fellow alum. I graduated back in 1990. And I want to thank our wonderful alum panelists who made the journey and the trip to Wellesley. They took time out of their very busy schedules and careers to join us this evening and share with you some of their experiences. I won't be doing much of any talking beyond this evening. We have Michaela Almonte, who is going to be our moderator for the evening. But I just wanted to give everyone a very hearty welcome and to thank all of you for coming this evening. I also wanted to let you know that we are filming the session. You won't be on camera unless you pose perhaps a question, but I did want to make you aware that we are filming it. Okay, so I hope you all enjoy this evening in this session, and without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Michaela. Thank you, Michaela.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Michaela Almonte. I use she, her pronouns. I work in career ed as a peer career mentor, and I'll be moderating this evening. I'm very excited to talk with our wonderful panelists today, and I thank you all for coming again. And I just want to introduce our panelists. We have Kim Hernandez from class of 2021, who works with MIT Lincoln Laboratory, is in the STEM field. We have Rebecca Liu, 2019, and who works in Asian Community Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit. And we have Elizabeth Mason, class of 2021, who works with the Berkeley Research Group, which is a consulting company. So thank you all for coming again. I really appreciate it. Our first little round of questions is going to be kind of like 2 in 1. We were going to ask about like housing and like social life after Wellesley. So like one of the major questions was like, how do you find housing after Wellesley? And you know, how do you like budget and like work with your financials after Wellesley? If you want to like start with that, we can go to like the other ones later. If anyone wants to go first. I'll pass the mic too, so.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca. I use she and they pronouns. Right now I live in Alston, and actually I graduated 2019, and since then I've lived in the Boston area. One of the reasons why I chose to stay in the area is because I felt that as a Wellesley student, I was close enough to Boston where I was familiar, but like I didn't really know it. Even I had a summer internship with the career ed in Boston, and I really liked it, so wanted to stay. And I guess my advice on choosing where you're going to live and work is that your network is really important. So like choosing somewhere not just for the job, but also if you like have friends there or family there, it actually is really important post-grad to have things that you're familiar with when other things are really hectic in your life.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I use she, her pronouns. Yeah, I definitely emphasize a lot of the things Rebecca said in that I moved into an apartment with 3 other Wellesley alums, and I've really enjoyed having that network. In terms of finding housing, luckily they did a lot of the work, but I know there's a lot of housing groups and Facebook groups that you can join to find people. And yeah, I felt the same way in that being at Wellesley, I hadn't fully experienced Boston, and I want to spend a few more years here to really get to know the place.
Yeah, shout out to Facebook Marketplace. I'm forgetting somewhere else, like another website, but it's like, I've been thinking, but I can't seem to remember. And I guess another thing to also consider, so I live in Somerville, so it's like right next to Cambridge. And even though people know I work at MIT, we're not actually located in Somerville. My lab is located out in Lexington, which is another suburb just like Wellesley. So I recommend especially like if you are in a scenario where your job isn't out in the suburbs, don't try to live close to work. I recommend kind of living in the city because there's more things to do and it's definitely way more fun. And then just kind of commute your way out. That's just like some advice. I know I've had friends that decided to move closer to the work like right after undergrad and they're like miserable and they don't have really much to do. So they recently just moved out into the city. And yeah, I went random personally. I live with like 4 guys and it's been interesting.
I love that. Thank you. I know a lot of you guys mentioned like networks and kind of like supports and resources after college. If anyone wants to like kind of delve deeper into like what were some more useful ones and other things like and other experiences like that. Yeah, living day to day. Or like maybe after like the first couple like weeks like post grad or whatever, like when you first starting out and whatnot.
Yeah, you probably heard many alums say this, but Wellesley Alum Network is on Facebook. There's like 1,000 different Facebook groups for all types of interests. People are pretty active. You can find ones that are like interest specific or identity specific. And there's always some fun intellectual conversation going on also in the Wellesley Facebook community. That's one. I think our experience may be a little bit different because like I spent most of post-grad during the pandemic when we were all alone and indoors. So what helped during that was like we would have weekly Zoom sessions with our friend group, or I started a virtual reading group with other Wellesley alums and work friends, and we still meet every 2 weeks now, like since the pandemic started. So I don't know, finding ways to have like regular meetings to be with people you know. And luckily now with virtual things, it's like almost a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like my roommates have been a big support network for me. I had known them a little bit at Wellesley, but I hadn't known them too well. But living together and having like built-in people to come home to and like talk about your day with, and then if there's a social event or some community event you want to go to, like people that you already know like could be interested in going with you. I think that's been really big for me to have those people there. And also just making it a priority of yours to build in time to catch up with a friend you haven't seen in a while, or call like a friend who's moved to a different state but you still want to keep in contact with. So just making sure it's a priority, I think, is big to keeping your network strong.
Yeah, so there's a good alum network at the lab where I work. Most of them are older, but I was also fortunate enough to join the lab with like 2 other physics students from Wellesley from my class. So I didn't really know them in undergrad. We took classes together, but now I'm like getting to know them. We hang out, so that's been really nice to just have other people that are kind of in the same boat as you are. I do also want to emphasize that sometimes it is hard because everyone's still adjusting to like their own schedules and like time management, and like sometimes things can be overwhelming. I know I get pretty overwhelmed sometimes with a lot of things to do that I kind of don't want to go out or do stuff, but it is important, yeah, like Elizabeth mentioned, was kind of to prioritize that and be able to like kind of push yourself out there to kind of meet up with a friend you haven't seen, even if they live all the way in Jamaica Plain, which is kind of far for me, but you put yourself out there to do that.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. I think we're gonna move on to our next section, which is like just like general questions that we got from people who signed up in a Google form. One of the questions is, what's one piece of advice you have for someone who's about to graduate? Which is a little bit scary, I understand.
I would say like enjoy your senior year. It's very cheesy, but especially senior spring. I decided not to apply to things while I was still a student. And this is very industry specific. I knew that I wanted to go into nonprofit or like education where the hiring timeline is probably like weeks in advance, not like a whole months in advance. So I decided I'm gonna graduate and then I'm gonna move back home and like find a job during that time. So that's what I chose, and even if you don't choose that, I would highly suggest that you go to all the senior events in your spring semester, because those are really, really special. And they may seem like, oh, I don't want to wake up for hoop rolling on a Saturday or Sunday, whenever it happens. But that's such a special event, and I remember those events, senior events, very fondly.
I think maybe one thing I would just say is that you probably already heard this, but you don't have to have it all figured out yet in terms of where you want to be in the next 10 years or anything. I think when I was a senior, I was very stressed about what job I was choosing, what path I was going down. I felt like I was like choosing the entire trajectory of my life. But I think now, being like a little over a year out, like still a lot of people around me are still figuring out what they want to do next, what job's going to be best for them. So really, like once you graduate, your opportunities like don't go away. You can continue to change and figure out who you are as like a post-grad person.
Yeah, mine is like a little weird because I kind of encourage people to apply to as many jobs as possible and just like keep a lot of options. I like to have options. It was kind of my safety net. Like senior year for me was COVID in my room, did not come back at all. So it was just like, I need to get a job. Who knows what's happening like out there. So I definitely recommend that because you also never know. And also apply to jobs even if they might not really interest you or you still don't know or you're unsure. You never know, they might surprise you. It might be something you might actually like as you like interview and meet people there. And just the last piece of advice I always tell people, and I've told some of the seniors here, is like negotiate your salary.
Thank you so much. Also, shameless plug, career ed does help you even after you graduate, so hit us up, we're great. Advisors are fantastic. Another question kind of in that genre, can you guys describe kind of the transition after college? I know you guys kind of hitting at like senior year, kind of like revving up for it, but can you describe kind of like maybe one surprise that happened after post-grad or something like that? Does not have to be a big one.
I don't know if this is like the one thing. I think when I started working, what surprised me was that at least the job I had ended at 5 p.m. And that seems so silly to say, but I feel like as a Wellesley student, I always had something on my mind that I needed to do. Homework just like kind of never ends. And we also live where we study and all of that. So that was really refreshing the first year to be like, work ends at 5 and then I have time for hobbies or friends or just to relax. So that's, again, like industry specific or like life specific, but it's nice to have moments where you can separate the work.
Yeah, I guess kind of going off of that, I think one big thing for me was after I graduated and now I have a job, there's no like I'm big thing that I need to be grinding away to like build my resume or do anything. Like I now have all this time that I get to figure out what do I really enjoy, how do I want to prioritize different things in my life, and I feel like it really opened up a lot of like self-reflection of how do I want to spend each day? How do I want to spend my free time that I maybe didn't do when I was studying all day long and then going to all these different club meetings.
I applaud her for that because I'm still struggling with actually to be able to like get off at 5, even though there's a lot of good work-life balance. Sometimes it's just, I don't know, I just have, it's always make sure you're like, it is something that I'm still working on to be able to kind of like separate work from life and just like not just do work. But one thing that I guess would surprise me that I kind of miss just being and living kind of where you work and where you eat, which is kind of nice, and I miss that. It's just like I got really surprised about how I lack some just like adult skills as like cooking or like cleaning. Like I'm really bad at that. That was just me. But like it's really hard for me to meal prep and be able to like manage that and make sure I have enough food and budgeting that into my week. And also commuting eats up a lot of my time. So I get home really tired. So just like that is something very different because you just have to walk across campus, and that is something that very much surprised me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're going to go to one of the bigger topics that we got questions for, jobs. How fun. One of the questions was, what is the job application and interview process? That can be either in senior year, after graduation, anything recent that's, any real life experience with like job interviews and stuff like that. Or maybe how did you get into your current position?
So I graduated 2019 and I'm at my second job. And actually like both jobs I got because of the Wellesley network, which is really awesome. But the first one I got because I worked at a political tech nonprofit in Somerville. And it was because a Wellesley alum who used to be a staff at Career Ed, who was part of the Lumpkin Summer Fellowship, was working there and kind of like reached out to me. And I worked under her for like a year and a half. And fun fact, that org, Act Blue, has a Wellesley alum as the executive director, which I didn't know when I applied, but it was fun to find out. But now I work at a nonprofit in Chinatown, and part of the reason is because I wanted to kind of go back and work in the community. At Wellesley, I did a lot of AAPI work, and I wanted to go back to that. So I reached out to my education professor at Wellesley, Professor Su Hong, and she is awesome. I see some people cheering for her. I was like out of a job, and I was like, she connected me with a Chinatown org to volunteer, and because of that volunteer opportunity, I learned about this current organization and applied, and so kind of two neat stories. Yeah.
So I work at a consulting firm in their health analytics practice, and I think career ed was a big part of me getting that job. Just in the first steps of refining my resume, writing a cover letter, figuring out what a good cover letter looks like. And then when it came time for interviews, I had multiple calls with career ed staff to do mock questions and figure out what types of things I should be practicing. And then also just calling up other friends from Wellesley to have them ask me mock questions so that I could prepare of what I would say. Because I feel like sometimes talking about yourself and your experiences is pretty hard if you haven't practiced, or being articulate can sometimes be difficult. So just relying on career ed to kind of point me in the right direction and give me those resources was, I think, really big in me actually landing a job.
Yeah, I can answer both of those questions actually. So I guess like the first thing my first interview ever was like sophomore year, like at bowling, and I just like butchered it. It was bad because I've never practiced. But if there's anyone also younger in the audience, I recommend you to also just like practice interviewing with people and like just do that because sometimes they like you don't know what you're getting yourself into if you just walk in blindly. Anyways, did not get that. But it's okay, you live and you learn. And that's another piece of advice, I guess, to the previous question about seniors. Even like if you're applying to jobs and this might not be like the one you want, it's still practice. It's interview and practice. So that's great. So this was at a conference. So I went to a lot of conferences during undergrad, and that's kind of where I got my first experience at like interviewing with just these companies. Become familiar with the type of interviews. There's technical interviews, case interviews, like case studies, or like behavioral interviews. So that was just something I kind of learned from upperclassmen. And then, yeah, like senior year came around, I had like 3 job offers, and one of them was like at a conference, one was at the career fair here, and that's a big thing again with like an alum, which I think this happened last week. Career ed happened here, and alums came in, and I interviewed for a position, and I got hired by a Wellesley alum at the lab, and she's actually one of the managers in my group. So just having that kind of network, and LinkedIn was kind of where the third job came out of, which is interesting. Some people might use LinkedIn, some might not. I use it. It worked out well, and I ended up getting like a job from there. So there's definitely different ways that you can kind of go out and do that. It's part of the Wellesley network, kind of just conferencing and practice and just like meeting and knowing these other companies. But again, career ed here was really, really helpful. Marissa Crowley, big shout out to her, because I got paired up with her and I was like freaking out. I was like, I don't know what to do, what job to take, what do I want? And she was just really great at like helping me just talk about my options, what it is that I wanted to do, and like just trying to make a pros and cons list basically. And she helped me negotiate my salary and kind of just like debate that out. So big shout out to her for that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I love how you guys mentioned so many like specific resources on campus, like career ed and a bunch of like professors, because they really do be coming into clutch. I guess going on top of that, another question is, entering the professional world, what did Wellesley prepare you well for, and what did Wellesley not so much prepare you for? And you can be completely honest.
It's going to be a shout out to my work study boss. So yeah, some of you might not know, but there's a machine shop on campus in the Science Center. So I did my work study there, and Larry Knowles. It was my little sanctuary. I just like building stuff and like using the lathe and just like the like vertical bandsaw. And I don't know, I think I gained a lot of confidence just from working there at this small shop and like some of the engineering students that would come and do stuff, because now I see machinists, I see mechanical engineers all the time, and I feel very comfortable to just be in male-dominated spaces at the lab with a lot of just engineers that I could be like, I know what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, that doesn't scare me. Just pretty random. That's the first thing that came to my mind, so I don't know.
You wanna go? I would say like after leaving Wellesley, one thing that surprised me is like the standard at Wellesley is so high. And when you're at a workplace, it's like not that high uniformly. Or what I mean to say is like your 100% maybe somebody else is like less than 100%. And what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that you are all very capable, and when you're at Wellesley, it feels like really hard because we are around other very amazing people. So I felt like, after graduating, I was like, I can do this work thing, like whatever. Like I have the skills. And another thing I want to say is shout out to all the student org work that I was doing, because when you're in a student org on campus, you like do everything, all the event planning, the communications work, the logistics. You kind of like practice it, and that comes in really helpful later on. So it's not just what you learn in the classrooms, but also like these student org event planning skills do help me in my work right now.
Yeah, I definitely second that. Like the student orgs I was in and the like leadership roles I took in them definitely built skills that I use today in my job that I didn't expect to be so useful and so transferable. But I think one thing Wellesley did prepare me for in my job is it gave me like I feel like a pretty well-rounded education that I was able to like bring to the table, like some fairly strong writing skills that maybe like I wouldn't have had if I had a purely like technical economics degree rather than a more like liberal arts education. I feel like that's been something that's been really appreciated at my job, and I'm happy to have built those skills.
Awesome, thank you so much. I think like one little like small thing that I know Kim mentioned, kind of how you navigate those male-dominated spaces. If you guys have any more, anything else to say on that matter, since Wellesley is a lot different than other spaces, and kind of like how do you deal with that almost like imposter syndrome, but like like not.
Like, I haven't really felt imposter syndrome where I work. It's just, I think just the nature of, science and STEM, like, you keep learning, but you really are never gonna know everything. Like, it humbles you really quick. So there's always a lot of learning on the job. So that's very normal. But it is a very different space. Like, I'm just in environments with like white men, and like, that's just pretty much the normal. And there's moments that I kind of forget that I'm in a room with them until like I kind of like sit down, and then I look around and I'm like, oh wait, like this is weird. Like I'm not a fan of this, or it's very interesting. Sometimes I might not get their humor. I don't know if it's like an age thing or like the male, or like, I don't know if they're like white and I'm not, like, I don't know. There's so many things that I'm like, I don't know, and I can't really get some of their jokes, but I don't know. But overall, I'm just like myself. I never really felt imposter syndrome. I just like asked them questions, and gratefully I haven't like had any weird interactions with the people that are my mentors at work, and I find everyone that I've worked with to be very respectful.
The reason why I'm passing the mic is because I worked at 2 nonprofits, and nonprofits are largely like, how do you say? There are many women and and LGBT people in the places that I've worked at. So I don't know how to answer this question.
Yeah, on a similar note, I would say my team is also not male-dominated, which is something I think I really appreciate, but also can't talk too much to how I overcame that.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I think now we're going to turn over to the audience for any audience questions. So if anyone wants to take this mic and...
so I can bring it to you if you want to raise your hands.
Hello, my name's Becky. I use she, they pronounce. Anyway, my question is, can you tell us a little bit more about what you studied at Wellesley, and then kind of how those skills or classes or whatever you did kind of transferred to the job that you're in, or was in?
Yes, so I was an applied physics major with a concentration in engineering. I came in wanting to do math, realized I like applied math. I always knew I wanted to do engineering work, so I did like my whole physics undergrad here, and then some classes at MIT and Olin. And I think it was just a lot of making sure you can work on a team, making sure you can work on projects, and just like diversifying that. And like also, it's good to not just do physics and do like I did some electrical, some mechanical engineering courses. So I just wanted to represent myself, especially when I was applying to jobs, to be pretty diverse and well-rounded in terms of like that, so they could kind of put me wherever they want to put me at. And I think a lot of the things I learned in physics I have not used But I think the big thing that you take out of a physics degree is really like being able to approach hard, challenging problems and estimating a lot and just like kind of dealing with that. Because every problem, like you just need to know how to solve it or learn, or it takes a team.
I was an American Studies major and with an Education Studies minor. Back then we didn't have any education major yet, otherwise I would have done that probably. And I guess like when you get a humanities degree, it's not exactly like STEM, like A to B, in terms of like what you study. But I think what Wellesley gave me was just like awareness of how to talk about systems, gender, etc. And where I work now, I work in Chinatown. We working for affordable housing in Boston, like totally the things I learned in American Studies and education, like are concepts, histories that are relevant to my work today.
Yeah, kind of a similar answer in that I feel like a lot of maybe the course material, I was an economics major and a chemistry minor, and I wouldn't say that in my job day to day that I'm necessarily using like specific like formulas I learned or concept I learned, but I think just the ability to like think critically about problems and also a lot the ability to convey like your ideas and how your thought process was to other people on your team. And I think that is a skill I've learned at Wellesley in discussing with other people, but not necessarily like specific content.
Awesome, thank you. And then we'll have our next question.
I'm not fast enough.
Hi, my name is Melanie. I'm a senior. I use she, her pronouns. And my question is, what is your advice for seniors kind of going through a little bit of senioritis? What were your motivations to, for the ones that did apply to jobs during their senior year, to have the motivation to do that as well as continue doing school well and obviously do all the extracurriculars that you were also doing?
Well, yeah, for me, yeah, senior year, I was in Houston, so I was in here. So there was not a lot of distractions. I don't know, so it's kind of hard now that everyone's on campus. But I think my main motivation was I'm like a first-generation college student, and I needed to make money, and I needed to help my mom. So that was kind of my main motivation to make sure that I applied and I got what I wanted, and also find a job that I would enjoy.
I think I was lucky to like get a job in the fall, and then I didn't have to worry about it for later on in the school year. So if that's an option for you, that would be great. But if not, I think sometimes it can just be like fueled by stress of like I need to get a job, so I need to apply. But I think there are many people that I knew who got jobs throughout very different points in time throughout senior year, even some after senior year. So I think making a continued effort to apply to jobs is important, but also trying to keep the perspective that like it'll work out eventually, and that like this is just something that you have to get through, and then after it'll be fine. But not to put too much pressure on yourself if you're having trouble getting a job right off the bat in the first few applications you put out.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I guess for me, I decided I either couldn't or didn't want to do both, like study and apply, and that's the choice I made. And because I wanted to enjoy and like save my mental health, I guess. So yeah, I guess advice is like, everyone's circumstance is different. And there's so many different, you have your own unique timeline. And things will work out. That's what I believed in. That's why I could tell myself, I'm just gonna focus on being a student, enjoying it, and then I know I will find a job later. And I did, so.
Awesome, thank you. I don't know if we have any more audience questions. Oh, we got one. Ooh.
Hi, my name's Anna. I use she, they pronouns. I guess I was wondering if you have any advice for someone who's kind of trying to look at like industry-specific timelines. Like I guess what I'm kind of looking to go into, like there's no professors in my department who specialize in it. So I guess I was wondering if you guys have any advice on like kind of how you found out about like those timelines. Like was it through like informational interviewing or like, yeah, if you have any advice.
Yeah, I would say to just reach out to people who are in the industries of interest. If you can find like someone who graduated from Wellesley who's in that industry, maybe that would be great. But even if not, I think now I receive like messages from people on LinkedIn that I don't know, and I'm happy to call them on the phone and talk to them about what the timeline is. So I think people are generally willing to help give you the information if they have it, but I think it's just a matter of taking those first steps and finding those people who can provide it for you.
Yeah, it's like tricky because it's hard. Like they don't really advertise this, right? You don't know exactly when. I think something that helped me was just talking to other friends, and like had a friend that was applying to jobs, and I was like, oh, I should probably be doing that, huh? Like just like that, and just like being able to talk to others and your friends, and just making sure everyone's accountable, and also just like, I don't know, maybe just every field is there. It's so hard. Like, yeah, you would really just have to reach out to someone that's in the field to kind of be able to know what that timeline is.
Awesome, thank you. I think we may or may not have time for one more question. Okay, yeah, we have time for one more question if anyone has one.
Oh, I saw, I think it was simultaneous, but maybe we can do one very quick last one.
Mhm.
I'm MJ. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a senior. I wanted to specifically ask about negotiating your salary in a research position in particular, because from what I've heard a lot, it's that like it's hard if the PIs only have so much money, like grant-wise. So I wanted to hear your perspective on negotiating, because it's kind of been like a thing I haven't heard much about in my research.
Are you talking about like grad school specific? Because you mentioned PI, so.
Yeah, or like being a research assistant.
A research assistant?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, well, what I did, like I kept up. I think one thing that really did help was that I kind of had a counteroffer, which is why I was getting back to like make sure you apply to jobs. Just apply to anything, you never know. And kind of, so that was like the one main thing that kind of helped me. I also kind of just started learning that they really had interest in me since they reached out to me, and I kind of used that to be able to like, hey guys, like, you know, maybe this isn't good enough, like I have another offer somewhere here, they're paying me better, just saying. And a lot of that really was helpful with my career ed, because like it's your first one, like you don't know how to deal with it, and it was very weird because like at first they come up before you even know your salary. It varies, but like I remember the HR lady was like, oh, how much do you think you should get paid? And I'm like, I don't know, like so you have to like do a lot of research, definitely, for sure, in terms of like where you're living and like the costs there and kind of like the average salary there. So like even if you don't have like a counter offer, at least you're aware of like what is average for that cost of living, and be like, this isn't like sufficient enough, or like also kind of just talk more about like, you know, I have like all these other expenses and this, and like this just doesn't this doesn't like satisfy me. You know, like I don't think this is some place that I would kind of want to be here. I don't think I'll have my like work-life balance or something like that. But a lot of it was definitely the career at helping me. I remember Marissa telling me how it is important to negotiate your first salary, because after you're working there, like bonuses and everything is just a percentage of what your base salary is at the beginning. So it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. So I recommend everyone to do it.
Hi, my name is Aurora. I use they, them pronouns. And all of you have been working during COVID. So I was wondering if, like, I don't know if we have time for it, but if you could, like, talk a little bit about working during COVID, if you worked remotely, how you found that, did it influence your decision to get a job in person, et cetera?
So I started my job last September, and I'd say for a big portion of last year, it was pretty remote. Like I've always had like a hybrid schedule where I could go into the office whenever and work from home whenever. But in more like this year, I've spent a lot more time in the office, and I really enjoyed the flexibility. But I think when I was working mostly from home, I didn't realize how much I was missing in terms of like actually working in an office and getting to know the people who are working around you. And I feel like that's been a big like improvement to how much I enjoy my job, in that I get to actually be around like people that I like and can talk to and can chit chat with throughout the day. So while the flexibility is nice, I wouldn't underestimate like how much value there is to being in person for a job.
At my first workplace, we were almost remote first. Well, we were like a third remote before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, they just went remote because it was a tech nonprofit, so it was pretty easy. And when I realized that I like working from home, and not everybody like feels the same way, but like I guess I am an introvert, so actually being at the office like really drains me. So I found out that like I like working from home, and now my current place, we have a small office, so we are doing hybrid, and I only need to go twice a week, which is like for me the perfect balance.
Yeah, my job is like in a weird, unique situation since we're like government. So we work with like classified stuff. So like you can't really be remote for stuff, just like the nature of the work. And it was tricky when COVID hit. There was definitely still people going in if they needed to. I came in, most of the people were just working remote because most of the people I work with have families and kids, and like I couldn't relate. But I just had to push myself to go into the office just to get a routine, a schedule. And then slowly people started coming around, and now there's a lot more like people there, and I actually can run into people in the hallway. But overall, it's very flexible depending on the work that I have to do. I can be hybrid, so I can be at home or not. So that's a really nice balance, and being able to have the flexibility is something good.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Round of applause for the amazing panelists. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. And yeah, have a wonderful night. And you guys have more events coming in the next coming minutes.
I just want to say very quickly, thank you so much, Elizabeth, Rebecca, Kim. This has been amazing. Thank you. We really, really are very, very grateful. And students, I just hope now you're even more fired up, and the evening is still ahead until 8 o'clock. We have some fabulous sessions, so I hope you're going to really stick around and dive deeper to learn more about networking, interviewing, personal finance, and budgeting. So more sessions to come, and thank you so much for attending this panel discussion with our alums.